Welcome back to the ticket setup series. In this session, we're going to be working through part 2 of our Power Automate Create Microsoft Entra account example. In part 1, we set up a life cycle and we added in the account provisioning phase a Power Automate task to create a Microsoft Entra account for my new hire process. And in part 2, we're actually going to set up the Power Automate flow. So to do that, we're going to segue over to Power Automate. And to get to Power Automate, you're just going to go to make.powerautomate.com. Now we have a full setup series video on an overview that provides an overview of Power Automate that also walks you through how to set up Power Automate to integrate with Tikit and set up accounts for those types of integrations. You're going to want to watch that to get a step-by-step on how to set up Power Automate. But once you're ready, you can come back here and create the flow for this example. So to do that, we're going to go into My Flows, and we're going to say New Flow here and choose Automated Cloud Flow. For the flow name, you're just going to give us something descriptive. I'll call my ticket setup series, new hire automation, create Entra account. And for the trigger here, I'm actually going to search for ticket. And this specific trigger is actually going to trigger off of my lifecycle PA task becoming active. The reason I'm selecting that trigger is because when the approval phase for my new hire process gets completed and it moves to the account provisioning phase, once I'm in that phase, I have 3 tasks in that phase. 2 of them are manual, and 1 of them is this Power Automate task. When that phase becomes active, it churns all of the tasks, approvals, and Power Automate tasks active as well. And I can listen for those things becoming active. So this trigger is going to listen for that particular Power Automate task. The second thing I need to do here, at least for my environment, is I need to make sure that my accounts are pointing to my setup series instance. This particular account is my other instance, so I'm going to point this over to my setup series instance. Once I've done that, I'm going to start filling out the details of this particular trigger. So I want to look for the lifecycle new hire automation, and I want to choose the phase account provisioning, and then the PA task of create Entra account. And once I fill that out, my trigger fills out, and now I'm listening for when that particular task becomes active. Once you have that trigger filled out, there are a few other things that you need to grab from Tikit to be able to create that Entra account. You need to grab the actual ticket and all of its data. You also need to grab that form that was filled out for that new hire process to get the information you need to actually create the Entra account. So to grab the ticket, we're actually going to leverage a ticket action here. That ticket action is get ticket. And what this action allows for us to do is to grab the entire payload of that ticket and give me all the properties around that ticket. It's a really simple action in terms of what it's asking for. So it just needs the ticket ID. And we're going to grab that ticket ID through the dynamic properties of my trigger. And you'll see here I have ticket ID available to me. And that's going to give me the entire payload. In that payload, there's the actual form itself as well. And what we're going to do now is we're going to grab that form and we're going to churn the properties of that form into variables. We're going to use a Power Automate action called parse.json to do this. And parse.json allows for us to provide a JSON object to it, which is what my form is currently sitting as, and parse it to create variables. So for the content here, it's asking for that particular object. And in my get ticket action here, you're going to see of all the properties here, I have card answer JSON. That's the actual form that's being submitted for this particular new hire process. For the schema here, we actually have a step-by-step guide on how to grab a custom form and parse the JSON and variabilize it. It's in the setup series area for Power Automate. So I recommend watching that for the step-by-step on how to do that. For the purposes of this particular session, I'm just going to copy that schema from that setup series section and paste that in here. But effectively what you're seeing here is I'm variabilizing that form. So first name, last name, job title are now going to be all available to me as I work through the rest of this flow. So I'm listening for that trigger. I'm grabbing the ticket and all the properties around the ticket. I'm then grabbing the form. Now, once I have those pieces of information, I can then create my Entra account. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to click Add Action, and I'm going to use a Microsoft action, a Microsoft Entra action, to create the account. Now, you have all sorts of options here from Power Automate and specifically Microsoft Entra. I am looking for Create User, and that's going to bring back the Create User Entra action here and allow for me to fill out the properties for that action to create this user account. I'm going to work through just setting up some of the required fields here. Every business is different and all the requirements are different, and you can fill those out per your business requirements. So we'll go ahead and make sure that account's enabled. For the display name, we'll choose first name from the form, we'll do a space there, and last name. For the mail nickname, I'll just do first name here. For the password, I'll do new hire onboarding. This probably isn't best practice, but just to give you an example of what to do here. For user principal name, I'll do first name dot last name at .com. There's other fields I can fill out here, but again, just to get you to feel for this, here are the required fields that you would need to fill out to create this user account. Now, the last thing I want to do here is I want to actually go back to the Power Automate task that triggered this particular flow, and I want to tell it whether it was successfully completed or not. That's going to allow for us to update the task within that phase to successful or failed or whatever it may be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one last action here, and that's going to be a ticket action. And that ticket action is going to be updating the PA task. This particular action is asking for the task ID of the Power Automate task that I want to update. So I'm going to go back to my dynamic properties. And I'm going to go back to the trigger when a lifecycle task becomes active. And I'm just going to use the PA task ID from that trigger. And then I'm going to decide what status I want to give it. In this example, keeping it simple, once these things are done, I want to mark it as succeeded. But you can do all sorts of interesting things here, conditional logic, something failed, do something else, send an email, all sorts of interesting things you can do, both inside of Power Automate, inside of Tikit here. But to keep it simple, I just want to update that task once successfully done. So just to really quick recap, summarize, when the trigger happens for that PA task becoming active, we're grabbing the ticket and all of its properties, we're grabbing the form, we're creating the user, and then we're updating the PA task to successful. And then, of course, once you're done with that, you want to click Save here to save that particular flow. This is where we're going to stop this particular part of the session. In part 3, we're going to see this all working together and walk through how a user will submit a new hire, and then after an approval, this will actually create the account. Hope you enjoyed the session. I'm looking forward to seeing you on the next one.